So how to avoid self-sabotage? It's cushion. Some elbow room from the phrase I know. It's I don't know. Maybe. Maybe it starts with maybe I don't know what I want. Ooh, Danny boy. We back. Talking dat Vedantic. And I don't have my music equipment today, so spare you the music. But if you liked it, shoot me a DM, because that was actually quite fun to play a few episodes where I was playing, and it's what I do in the open state shows here in Venice, where playing, and it is philosophy, spoken word philosophy over the tracks, over the music. So if you liked it, shoot a DM our way, and Nick, my producer, and I will take a look at if it's worth a rigmarole to set that up each episode. But today's reflection, it is a continuation of yesterday's, of sorts. Yesterday was all about chaos, and the chaos we feel, it's always inner chaos that matters to us. Outer chaos, some people get excited by that, and they don't feel inner chaos. It is, as this philosophy says, the value is not in the object. It's in our relationship to the object. Therefore, if you're feeling chaos about something, it's not because of the inherent chaos within that object or that event. It is within ourselves. Case in point, your body could be getting cut up, and you're anesthetized, completely unaware of it, feeling no chaos whatsoever in the midst of a operation room that is filled with chaos. But something that episode touched on is, and underscores, is our role in that chaos. Sometimes the chaos can feel like it's caused by an external event outside of our control. But at the heart of most of the chaos in our lives, we know we're the causes of it. That can multiply to the chaos when we know, shit, I did that. I can't believe I did that. Why did I do that? I didn't need to do that. One of the things that I said yesterday was that there's this Warren Buffett quote that goes, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 1 second to lose it. In that scenario in which you lose that reputation, it is so often the case that it is just something you did and you knew, I should not have written it that way. I should not have said that and lied about the business numbers. There's so many examples we can think of where it took a second to completely destroy our inner peace. The through line between philosophy, religion, therapy, the through line between those three things is essentially this: how to avoid self-sabotage. What holds so many of the major world traditions together is that it's trying to be a guidebook on how do you end up, in many cases, how do you end up on the side of the good, aka on the side of the big battalions that's going to win the war, that allows you to be in some hedonistic, amazing, sensual heaven. That's mostly what it comes down to, is what's the guidebook so that I can be in that big ass metaphorical mansion up in heaven with the big boss right next to me. For philosophy, it is, maybe it's a reflection each day on Vedantic principles. And it's, as I say many times in this podcast, studying the manual on life, on living well. Studying the manual so that you don't live unwell. Or psychotherapy, recognizing, I do that when people get close to me because of X, Y, or Z situation that happened early on in life. Therapy sessions with a psychologist are never, hey, how do I figure out how it's other people's fault? It's always an introspection on what did I do to cause this and how can I avoid it in the future? Self-sabotage. It's interesting because the enemy we usually think of when we think of who's against us in a cartoonish, caricaturized way is maybe it's evil. Someone with big horns and the agents of his working against our greater good. Or maybe you think it's the world working against us. Maybe it's those other people. Maybe it's my enemies or this or that person in our lives. And yet, when you take a professional approach to it, the enemy is not someone else or out there. The deliberate approach, philosophy, religion, psychotherapy, is and perennially says, you are your own worst enemy. When it matters most, do you do what helps you or do you sabotage your situation? But sabotage doesn't look like I'm going to hit 10 cars on the way to work. It doesn't look like I'm going to have way too many drinks and know it. It's more like having a disease and not knowing it. And as Swami says all the time, having a disease is bad enough. Not knowing that you have it can be fatal. It's the self-sabotage that we're not aware of. It does not look like blowing up the highway on your way to work by swerving in and out of the lane. It actually looks much more like, a good example of this, I pulled my back about a year ago and I watched a bunch of Entourage. I actually pulled it on the night before Christmas Eve. And our kids and my wife ended up flying to Dallas. And I was like, I'll be better in a day. I literally could not move because I had thrown it out so badly. And I told her I'll be good enough in a day or 2 days because I could not sit up straight, and I'll make the flight, in a day. Worst case, maybe Christmas Day, and I'll be there. Ended up taking 5 days for me to recover to where I could move. Whew, that was tough. Self-sabotage because I was completely dehydrated and lifting things totally improperly, heavy luggage totally improperly. And I had not been investing in my strength. Certainly didn't know the limits of it when I tried to lift and twist. I know the precise moment where I was like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But in the broader sense of self-sabotage, it was really interesting that like 6 out of the 8 seasons of Entourage, like I saw it happen, and being able to just watch them all the way through was actually quite boring to see every season, 6 out of the 8 seasons. The drama, the entire drama of the season came down to the main character buying a house, some massive house. Well, there's a verbal agreement for some big studio movie because it's a HBO show about this up-and-coming actor that becomes the it guy in Hollywood. And 6 out of these 8 seasons, they sign the purchase of a house that they're about to be able to afford. And the verbal agreement falls through on the big studio movie, and the entire 12, 14 episode season is about the drama that ensues. For the mind, writing checks that the bank account, in this case, actually couldn't afford. Desire outstripping our means. The definition of prosperity is your means superseding your desires. The definition of poverty, whether you have $500 in your bank account or 500 million. Definition of poverty, therefore, is do your desires, do they supersede your means? Do they outstrip the means you have to purchase or pursue them? The rest of the season would then have all of these things that Vince and his friends needed to do to try to get that movie, to try to get that agreement made, to try to get some relationship locked in, or to get that one last naysayer in the studio to okay the project, all of these things that come down logistically to, will they then have the money for the commitments they've made with money that they didn't have? That's what self-sabotage looks like most of the time. Is you mentally make a commitment to something, an attachment to something. Maybe even physically sign the dotted line. Tied to an outcome, an object, or a relationship. Tied to it, and it begins to elude you. Stress, after all, from yesterday's episode, is defined as mental agitation from unfulfilled desire. Investing the thought flow in that desire. After all, to want something, the definition has two definitions of wanting. To want is to desire, it is also to lack. To want for nothing means to lack nothing. Therefore, to want something is not just to desire it, to think about it, but it's actually to reinforce in your mind that you don't have it. To reinforce a thought flow over and over and over again. I don't have that. I don't have that person I can spend the rest of my life with. I don't have the job satisfaction that I'm craving. It's a reinforcement over and over again. I don't have the respect from my peers that I want. To desire it, as Naval Ravikant, a mentor here in California, says often in private and frequently in public, that desire is a contract with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want, until you get what you lack. It's a contract to be unhappy. And to have those desires outstrip your means is to have this debt, this hangover of all of these things we're unhappy about. Self-sabotage does not look like, let me hit the launch button and blow up my life. It looks more like, I know what's good for me. And it's that. I know. I don't need anyone to tell me. It's this. So how to avoid self-sabotage? It's cushion. Some elbow room from the phrase, I know. It's, I don't know. Maybe. And maybe it starts with, maybe I don't know what I want. Maybe all these contracts to be unhappy is the opposite of anything that I would actually consciously want. And yet I keep signing them. How to avoid self-sabotage is recognizing maybe I have a disease that I don't even fully grasp that I have. To keep signing these contracts to be unhappy. In the episode a few weeks ago called The Two Words, It's two words that are the blinders from what's really going on in front of us, are the words I know. So how to avoid self-sabotage? It's to avoid those words I know. To say, like I said, to say maybe I don't know. To slowly eliminate the ego, which is so embodied in those two words of I know. To eliminate the ego. And how do we eliminate the ego? This philosophy is crystal clear on that. Knowledge of the self. This philosophy is crystal clear on that. It's knowledge. It is through knowledge of the self. Study and reflection each day. Knowledge of the self. Knowledge of exactly what we're talking about. Just recognizing, oh, those two words that seem innocuous, I know. Those could be the words that set up a 14-episode, season-long series of dramas. Because I was so sure I knew what was going on when I signed that dotted line for the thing I couldn't afford. I was ill-prepared for things potentially falling apart. Humility is the antidote to self-sabotage. And humility is the fruit of pursuing knowledge. I say it all the time, it seems so simple that it doesn't seem powerful enough for people in many ways. It's like trying to tell people about breath work and breathing consciously and how that can be extremely effective for so many different areas of their life. And they're like, no, there's no way. Breathing, come on. It's got to be in some pill, or it's got to be in some book that's $20 and some revolutionary practice that I take on each day. It can't just be in improving my breathing. And yet we know the best things in life are free. Often are simple. It doesn't make them easy. Bench pressing 500 pounds is not easy, but it is pretty simple. It is not complicated. Similarly, knowledge of the self it's not easy studying and reflecting each day. But one of the biggest blinders we have is we think, oh, I can just do it here and there because I basically know a lot of this stuff. Or I know it's in a couple different things. It's in this thing right around the corner. It's not in silent contemplation, reflection each morning for 15, 20, 30, 45 minutes. And yet that's what this philosophy for 5, 6, 7,000, 8,000 years has said over and over and over again. Is that it is. And if we can take off the blinders of knowing and put on the crown of Ascharya, of wonderment, saying, maybe I don't know. Let me explore this for 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row. Study and reflection each morning. And my favorite form to recommend to people, yes, you can listen to these reflections in episodes, but this is an on-ramp to reading a book like Vedantic Treatise or the online lectures that the ashram puts on, that recorded a decade ago, of Swami's actual lectures that you can listen to from the comfort of your home. This project is meant to just be an on-ramp to those because they're systematic, methodical. These are fun, maybe entertaining, but really just an on-ramp to those. So how to avoid self-sabotage? Well, it's the same antidote to self-sabotage as it is to the ego, and that is humility. Humility comes from study and reflection on the truth each morning. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time. Or maybe you'll heed my words and maybe we won't. you.